Great to connect today, Judd. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You've been researching and writing about a topic that I'm very interested in. And to introduce this topic, I want to share one of my all-time favorite ideas from Annie Duke, who I know you are familiar with. She was the first female World Series of Poker champion and former guest of the show. She said, "The outcomes of our lives are determined by only two things, luck and the decisions we make." Now, as an academic who's done some research on decision making, I tend to focus on the decision making aspect of that idea. But you have done some research and writing about luck. So I would love to hear what you have learned about luck that you would most want to share with others.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Annie Duke is phenomenal. She actually blurbed my book, so
Saw that,
I'm
yes.
particularly happy about that. Yeah, so the book is called Lucky by Design, and I think the thing I've learned most about luck in thinking about it and writing it is that a lot of times outcomes that appear to be determined by luck, either mostly by luck or entirely by luck, we actually have more control over them than we want. So if you think about Annie Duke's kind of framework of there's things that are determined by luck and by our decisions, turns out a lot of the things that we might have thought were just attributable to luck, actually we have some say in by kind of understanding the environment that we're in and then making the right decisions, being strategic in the way that we think about the world. We can actually get lucky in situations when we otherwise might not.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've shared that quote so many times, literally probably 100 times or more. And I think about luck, where I was born, who my parents are. I have no control over that. And then I think about decisions. Okay, how can I make decisions that change the outcome of my life? And I have not thought much about what kind of decisions can I make that influence the luck. So yeah, I would love to dig into this. So where do people miss out on opportunities to create luck for themselves?
Yeah. So the way I came to this is thinking about what I call hidden markets. So I'm an economist. We love markets. We think about markets all the time, and often, if you've taken an econ class or heard an economist talk, you'll hear that we're obsessed with prices. So if you ever hear an economist say supply equals demand, that's actually a statement about prices rising until there's just there's few enough people who want something and enough of it to provide for everybody who wants it. And as an economist interested in markets, I realize not all markets have price kind of solve this problem, making supply equals demand. There's lots of situations where there's more demand than supply at the prices that are being charged, or we're in a world where an environment where we don't want to charge a price for something like a government benefit or a life-saving organ transplant. Like we don't want price involved. And so in these situations, it's a fundamental issue of scarcity where there's more people who want something than we have available to give to them. And these are the situations where you might think the outcomes are due to luck, or where you might think that luck is a big component in them. And what I realized in kind of thinking more about these markets is actually no, they're hidden markets. They don't operate only on price. They have other market rules that determine who gets what. And once you see those rules, then you can recognize, oh, maybe there is a strategy that I can play here that actually would help me do better.
Okay, really interesting. So one of the main ideas is identifying or looking for these hidden markets where price isn't the determining factor of who gets to buy the product, get the asset. So if we find these hidden markets, then we can tap into resources that we might have at first thought maybe we couldn't get into.
Yeah. And it sounds when we talk about it abstractly, it sounds it does. I feel like it's a little bit too abstract. So let me just give you examples,
Right.
like because then I think it'll become clear. So Taylor Swift had a very popular tour recently. I mean, all of her tours are popular, but the Eras tour, they had massive stadiums, tens of thousands of seats in each tour day. But at the prices that they were charging, there were many, many more people who wanted to attend each show than there were seats available. Like at those prices, she could have sold out some of these stadiums, five times. And so instead of, so there is a price, you're paying for the ticket, but it's not the thing that's determining who gets what. When I want to get a reservation at a popular restaurant, there might be that I go to book an appointment, and they're all booked up for the night that I want to eat there. It could be that if I am thinking about applying for a job, I can't just say like, hey, I'd like that job, please give it to me, and I'll accept a lower salary than somebody else. That's not how those markets operate. And so there's all these different environments where there is some scarcity, some limited resource. There might be price involved, like the salary or the ticket price or the price you pay for the food at the restaurant. But it is not the thing that determines who gets what. There are some rules that get set up that decide who gets the restaurant reservation, who gets the ticket, and who gets hired in that job. And once you understand those rules, you can kind of do better in getting the things that you want in those hidden markets.
Really interesting, because from my Econ 101 class, I would think, okay, well, why is Taylor Swift not charging a higher price? If she could sell out 5 stadiums, she should raise the price enough to just sell out one stadium. So why would somebody not do that? And now how can we recognize that there's a hidden market? The supply and demand is not being solely controlled by price. How can we benefit from that?
Yeah, perfect. So no, it's a great question, because economists, we kind of think that a seller will raise the price until we say the market clears, where supply equals demand, right? That's the highest price that they can, sell the good for, and that'll maximize their profit. And the thing that is true of prices, and kind of relates to the way we think about markets in general, is that sometimes we don't think it's fair necessarily to set prices to clear the market. Sometimes we as a society, so think about, I mentioned life-saving organ transplants, or if I haven't yet, let me say that now, that right, this is a case where there's a limited amount. There are many, many people who need a kidney, say, to replace kidneys that have failed, and there's a limited supply. We do not just raise the price and say, okay, the people who are willing to pay the most for kidneys get them. And so instead, we have some other set of rules that decide, when a kidney becomes available because someone passed away but was willing to donate their organs, we need some other way to allocate it so that a hidden market pops up.
And we don't
Now,
want to just say, in the case of markets, okay, or in the case of organs, richest person gets the kidney. Like,
it would
that's
we
pretty.
would not, right? We as a society, we don't think that that's the right way to do it. Taylor Swift might also feel the same way, that maybe it's not an ideal situation to play all of her shows to stadiums, not of her really diehard fans who might not be able to afford the high prices that would clear the market. That it might be less fun for her. It might be something she doesn't enjoy. It might be something that feels unfair for her to, price her ticket so high that her Swifties can't attend, or many of her Swifties can't attend. And so sellers will sometimes do that. And maybe it's a strategic decision. Like maybe the restaurant doesn't raise its price until it's very easy to get a reservation, because they like the mystique. They like it to be hard to get a reservation, because then more people will hear about the restaurant and come next time. I don't think Taylor Swift needs to build up her fan base that way. I think it exists already. So those two sellers might have different motives, but in either case, right, what's ending up happening is that the price ends up kind of too low from the Econ 101 perspective, and then we need some other way to allocate things.
Okay, great. So we're now in this hidden market world. How do we take advantage of this?
Yeah, great. So first thing is identify what type of hidden market it is, or I should say, what are the market rules that are out determining who gets what. So we've talked about these different examples, and turns out that for restaurant reservations, it's typically first come, first serve race. A race. Whoever clicks on a reservation first when it's available gets it. And some restaurants, very popular restaurants, they will release all of their tickets at a single, all of their reservation slots at a single moment in time. So say, all the reservations for July will be released on June 1st. And then it's whoever clicks on it fastest. So and there's a lot of markets that look like this, that use speed, and they're not just, sometimes it's a waiting list, a first come first serve waiting list, where the faster you get on the waiting list, the kind of higher you are on that list. And so, in that, a lot of the strategy involves just recognizing that there's a race and then being fast. Because, right, if you show up to ask for a reservation at a restaurant that is very popular and you don't realize that all the reservations are going in the first few minutes they are released, right, you're never going to have a shot at it. Once you realize it's a race, then you can be there and be ready to click. This played out for me when I first was trying to sign my daughter up to after school classes at her elementary school, because I have a older son. The after school classes at his elementary school, there's never a race. There's never excess demand. Like any class you want, you can sign up for. At her school, they announced that registration was opening at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was like, oh, 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. That's weird. And then later they were like, oh, actually, we're moving it to 10:30 a.m. because it otherwise would conflict with pre-K graduation. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, they're telling me the exact time now. They're moving it for 18 families. Like, there's going to be a mad dash. And as a new parent to the school, if I didn't recognize, like, oh, this is this is a first come first serve race, and the good stuff's going to go pretty quickly, I might have shown up, later that day after 10:30 and thought I got unlucky that, the things she wanted were taken. So that's first come first serve races. But Taylor Swift used a lottery to allocate most of her tickets. So there was a verified fan lottery, and you had to go through a bunch of processes just to be able to enter yourself in the lottery. But there are strategies to play there too. Again, lottery's the classic. We think it's all based on luck. But if you want to go see Taylor Swift and you have a bunch of friends who want to go with you, right, you should all be entering the lottery. So you each get an individual entry. It's, some lotteries you're not allowed to enter yourself multiple times, but if you're getting something that's valuable for a group of people and you're willing to share, right, everyone can enter the lottery. You only need one person to win, and you get a higher chance of success. Some lotteries get more complicated. There's ones if you're a recreational hunter and you like to hunt big game. There's some lotteries that for big game hunting tags where they reward you with additional entries for every year that you've lost. So if you enter this year to hunt a particular animal, you lose. Then next year when you enter the lottery, you get 2 entries instead of just one. They give you credit they try to increase your chances of winning, and that introduces a different strategy of playing, basically call it early and often, where you just enter every year, even years you don't want to hunt. Some of these allow you to say, I'd like to enter and lose, just to kind of build up my my tickets for next year. So depending on the market rules, there may be opportunities to kind of figure out what's a way to increase your chances. And do one more, because I mentioned life-saving organ transplants. There's a complicated waiting list. It depends a little bit on how long you've been waiting, how long you've been on dialysis, often for kidneys. But one thing you can do is kind of like entering a lottery multiple times. You can add yourself to the waiting list at different transplant centers across the country. It's called multi-listing. And that means that if an organ becomes available, kind of close to one of the transplant centers that you're listed at, you will have a higher chance of getting that organ as the kind of life-saving donation that you need than if you were just, listed at one transplant center. And so this is a strategy that people play. It's not necessarily easy or cheap. You often, will have to go to a different place to get tested at a different transplant center. And that is sometimes not covered by insurance. So kind of introduces a little bit of the financial stuff that we were trying to avoid. But it does kind of give you a chance in that case to get a life-saving organ transplant.
Coming from somebody whose mom received a heart transplant in 2002 and lived an additional 20 years because of that, in what area of your life could you possibly want to increase your luck more than when it comes to an organ?
This is one of these things where people say, oh, it's not fair that people are, being on multiple lists. It's like, look, if you want to redesign the system. But when somebody's life is on the line, and they're going to do everything that they can to to do that. And so you kind of can you have to imagine if the strategy is available to you, you'll play it.
Okay, so how about I read something about increasing your luck on dating apps. So what sort of rules are
Yeah.
going on there?
Yeah. So this is what I call a choose me market. So these are markets like labor markets where it's not algorithmic. It's not like there's a lottery happening on the other side of the dating app that's determining whether somebody matches with you. You are trying to find somebody. They are also trying to simultaneously find you. So the framework that as an economist I bring to it, kind of the way I think about the hidden market, is that on these dating apps, there's two things that you're trying to communicate, and two things you're trying to suss out, and that people are trying to suss out about you. First is whether you're kind of desirable enough, whether you kind of clear the bar. Am I attracted to this person? Would I want to be with this person for a night or for longer? The second thing, and this maybe matters more for the longer, is kind of how interested do I think that person is in me? Because I don't want to start dating somebody who, I mean, I'm married. I've been married a long time, so it's not talking about this in the general sense, but how interested is this person in me for kind of a longer term thing? And so when you start to realize that actually what you need to do when you're on these apps is uh, give people who are potentially interested in you the kind of confidence in knowing that actually you are somebody who is worth investing in, chatting with, going on dates with, because you may end up being a good kind of long-term match. And so I think this cuts against some advice that at least I heard when I was single, that like, oh, you got to be very aloof, and don't ever look too interested. And it's like, well, once you've cleared the bar of the person is interested in you, then you do want to make sure that they understand that you are interested in them, that you are worth their time and energy in trying to develop a relationship with, and that you're not just kind of stringing them along, kind of waiting for something better to come by. So there's a really cool study, if you'll let me talk about an academic research on this, where it was a South Korean dating platform. It was kind of before the swipe days, but you could think about it in like a Tinder style setup, where there were a bunch of people that were on the other side of the market, people you might want to date, and you could send 10 proposals, like swiping right on 10 people. And the researchers gave folks like a super swipe, a way of signaling that you were particularly interested in a person. And they called them roses. And actually, one of the platforms, active platforms, uses the term roses for these kind of super swipes or super likes. And what the researchers found is that these were very helpful when somebody was using them to signal interest in somebody who might have been worried that that person who was sending them the proposal was out of their league. So if you send one of these roses to like a super attractive person that everybody agrees is great, they don't care. They know, they're not worried that you're not going to be interested in them. But somebody who's might be a little more insecure about that, these roses worked super well. And so what was important there is signaling that, like, I'm actually interested in you, even if you might be worried that I'm not. And that means I'm, particularly, I'm worth it for you to chat with and maybe try to pursue something.
Also, I am very happily married and have been for almost 20 years, but it's such an interesting way to view the dating market. And I love talking to an economist about it. Like, "Hey, look, here's the things that matter, and here's the things that we should be thinking about, and here are the things you want to signal."
Yeah.
So, okay, well, how about is this related to, maybe it's not related to settling for your second choice, but why can that increase our luck also?
Yeah. So there is a connection, so I want to say one other thing on dating, but let me talk about this general phenomenon. So one strategy, there's some strategies that are very specific to the market that you're in, right? Markets that rely on being there fast, so races or getting at the top of a waiting list. There's a bunch of strategies related to speed and kind of knowing that it's a race. But then there's some strategies that are kind of come up a lot that end up being relevant in a lot of different hidden markets. And one of them is what I call settling for silver, as in the silver medal at the Olympics. And it's in contrast to, say, going for gold, for doing the thing, going for the thing that you really, really value the most. Settling for silver is recognizing that maybe you'll be better off kind of pretending that something that's less desirable is actually your first choice. And so this, think about the restaurant reservation situation I described earlier. It's possible that everybody wants to eat at 7 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday night. That's the most desirable time. We kind of all agree that that would be the ideal time to eat. If all the restaurant reservations are being released simultaneously, and everybody's clicking for 7 p.m. or 7:30 p.m., you're very unlikely to get it. You're competing with a lot of people. While they're all clicking for 7 p.m., if you click for 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m., so clearly, it's not your first choice, but you are going for it, that is going to be there's going to be a lot less competition there, and you're much more likely to get the thing that you want. This is true for restaurant reservations. It's also true for, applying to college early decision, where you only get to apply to one school early decision. You're committing to go there. Your first choice school might be phenomenal school with super high admission standards, and you might not get in there even if you apply early. But what you're doing if you go for your gold and apply to that long shot is you're missing out on the opportunity to apply early decision to a school that actually would admit you if you applied early, but might not admit you if you didn't, right? Where the applying early is going to be pivotal. And so maybe, if the long shot is really a long shot and you're never going to get in, maybe you can get lucky at your second favorite school by kind of recognizing that it's good to kind of signal that they are your top choice in that early decision application.
Well, let me say something too here. What's so interesting about settling for silver is that I think many times the silver can actually be better than the gold. We want the gold, and everybody wants the gold, but sometimes it's like, well, maybe the 5:30 reservation is actually kind of nice because it's not quite as crowded, or maybe at this different university now I'm a little bit bigger fish in a smaller pond, and so I actually have a better time than I would have had I gone for gold.
And this is great because this kind of relates to the thing I wanted to say about dating, which is, well, first let me say, this phenomenon you just said is, I think, true. A lot of times people, there's a herd mentality. People pile into what they think is, that they infer from other people wanting something that it is something that they should want as well. And so thinking about your second choice and kind of how much less happy would you be with your second choice? Maybe you wouldn't be that. Maybe it actually is very, very close to your first choice, and maybe in your case it might overtake it. But even if it's just they might end up being much closer than you think. Your second choice and your first choice. The kind of a related thing is, and this is what I want to say about the dating market as well, is we have economists think about preferences for lots of things, schools, but also romantic partners, as a combination of general preferences that everybody shares. Kind of we all agree that a more symmetrical face is more attractive than a less symmetrical face. It's kind of this. But there's terms like classically handsome that get used to describe people. But there's also idiosyncratic preferences, things that individual people find more attractive than other people, things that we disagree on. And that's phenomenal, because otherwise, the world would be boring. But the fact that we all are interested in different things. So, somebody has hobbies that I also really like, and that may be different than the hobbies you like. Or I might see that somebody has, their favorite movie that they list on their profile is a movie that it's this obscure movie that I love, right? These kinds of things, or I should say, maybe there's a certain physical type that someone finds attractive that, isn't conventionally handsome. These idiosyncratic preferences, these are the things that, on a dating app or something, that when you look for those, it ends up being you're much more likely to find a match with somebody, because you're kind of picking the things that make you particularly good for each other, rather than if you're, using your super swipes or your roses or your super likes on people that everybody is sending super swipes to, because they are liked by everybody for the reasons we talked about earlier. And so understanding what your idiosyncratic preferences are is actually really helpful in both figuring out what it is that you want and then also figuring out, what the right strategy is for you to play.
I just think this is so interesting, all within the lens or through the lens of how can we make ourselves more lucky? And you've given us so many interesting ideas. And I just love the example of just by recognizing with your children's after school activities, just recognizing the market you were in just massively increased your luck. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, Judd. So any final things you would like to share as we wrap up here?
Just making people feel like they have more agency in these markets, and as they go through the world and feel like things are out of their control, or they don't know what to do in a situation. And one of the reasons I wrote the book was to help people see the hidden markets around them, understand how they work, and then figure out the right strategies so that they can get lucky. They can get lucky by design.
I love it, Judd. I look forward to reading the book. I want to be more lucky. Who does not want to be more lucky? And you've given us such good insight today. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Loved it. You crushed it. I already look forward to listening to this again. And like I said, look forward to reading the book. So thanks so much, Judd.
Well, thanks so much for having me.